Once again, happy Gay Pride Month for 2022. In my last video, I proved that what I would call family values Christianity, but also family values Judaism, I proved that they've been lying about the Bible. And because they've been lying about the Bible, this thing that you hear called globo homo, also LGBTQ+, none of that would have been possible. If you hadn't created an environment hostile to us, the enemy would not be able to use homosexuals like me against the church. But they've been able to do it very effectively. And what do I see from you? I see you doubling down on your bullshit. Well, I got to do what I got to do. I got to do what I can do, and this is one of the things that I can do. Now, one of the passages that I did not deal with is the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, I mean, that's an obvious thing to do, isn't it? I mean, we are called sodomites. Thanks for that. And I say that not just as a homosexual, but as I will demonstrate here, you have screwed up some critical theology by taking that passage and hijacking it and making it about homosexuality. You screwed up big time. And now I'm going to deal with Sodom and Gomorrah. We're going to fix it. Now, what is Sodom and Gomorrah about? Sodom and Gomorrah is about UFOs or UAPs or whatever they're calling it. I refuse to call them UAPs. They're UFOs. Screw you. The bottom line is this. Now, I said in that video that everything about UFOs that we're seeing is in this book here, the Bible. I'm going to be reading from the New Oxford Annotated Bible with the Apocrypha, New Revised Standard Version. I like that translation best. Now, as I walk through these passages, now I said in the previous video that everything comes from the Bible, right? There is one major exception. I'm going to walk through the different sources that I think is going to go on here. Then I'm going to talk about, a lot of people when they talk about UFOs are talking about Skywalker Ranch. I'm going to talk about what I think is going on there. And then we're going to get biblical. I'm going to read a whole bunch of different passages for you. Now, in my previous video, I told you that I'm writing a book on Atlantis. I know what Atlantis is. I know where the story comes from. There are 3 different threads. There might be a 4th. The timing might be back to the end of the last ice age. But there are 3 different threads that Plato is weaving together. And the conclusion that I drew is that Plato had read Moses. That sometime after he wrote the Republic, somebody had introduced him to Moses. Probably a Judean living in Athens, maybe somebody who was in Plato's academy. Okay? And I also pointed out that it sounds crazy that Plato could have read Moses and has incorporated Moses into his work, but then I showed you this scholar here, Russell Gmirkin, this case Plato in the creation of the Hebrew Bible. He thinks that Judeans had read Plato and then created the Bible. That's how close they are. But I reject that, not because I'm a Christian, but because there are things about the Bible that they completely forgot about when they translated it into Greek. There's the Bible translated into Greek called the Septuagint. Okay? For the works of Moses, they translated about 290 BC, 50 years after Plato. There's a lot of stuff going on in the Bible that they forgot all about. Some of the things that I'm talking about here, they forgot all about them by that time. This stuff is older than Plato. That's the only way. Well, what does that mean? Well, if Plato read Moses, and that didn't get translated until 50 years after he was dead, did Plato read Hebrew? No, almost certainly not. He read Greek. That means there was another translation before the Septuagint running around. Maybe something that people weren't happy with. The Holy Spirit has really moved this Gay Pride Month for me. I only planned on doing that last video on this video, but there's been another major breakthrough in scholarship. Here's what's going on here. When I dealt with the Gospels before, I pointed out that Luke especially, but also the Gospel of Mark, was very gay. There's gay stuff going on there. Every single time I turn to the Gospel of Matthew, the gay stuff is gone. As I put it, Matthew ran away from the gay. Well, Matthew, Mark, and Luke are what are called the synoptic Gospels, seen with the same eye. They're so similar that there's only three ways, according to modern scholarship, that the similarity can be explained. Either Matthew and Luke are working independently and they're drawing from the Gospel of Mark, plus something called Q for Quella, a source of Jesus' sayings. Now, the vast majority of scholars work with that, and that's what I did. It neither hurts nor helps my case. It just tells me that Matthew, for reasons too complicated to get into, the sources that Matthew and Luke are drawing from were originally pretty gay, and just Matthew altered the sources to get to, not to contradict them, but not to be anti-gay, but just to be non-gay. Because I assumed it was upsetting a lot of people. It tends to be called the Jewish gospel, so maybe the Jewish community at the time had problems with that. Maybe they saw it as Greek. It was associated too much with the pagan Greeks. Now, of the minority that are left, the majority believe that Matthew was written before Luke, that Matthew draws from Mark and Luke draws from Matthew, and there's really no need for Q. Okay? But that reckoning, that means that Luke took stuff that was not about homosexuality and he gayed it up. All right? The problem is Mark also has homosexual elements. I did a series stretching through a whole year called Boot Camp for Saints, where I deal with Mark, and I talk about that extensively there. Obviously, this is not the place to talk about it. Now, the minority of the minority think that Luke was written first and Matthew was written after Luke, and that Matthew drew from Mark and drew from Luke. And that, once again, there is no Q. Now, this does wonders for my case. And in fact, that's what my case indicates. Mark and Luke are pro-gay, especially Luke. Matthew would react to that later. But I never said that because that's not what the scholars were saying, so I don't want to pick a fight. That's called, now this last case, the minority of the minority, and that's another reason why I didn't go with it, is called Matthean posteriority. Matthew comes last. He comes after Luke, and he comes after Mark. He draws from Luke. That does wonders for my case, because that means that it's not a coincidence that all the gay stuff in Luke is removed in Matthew, because Matthew read Luke, saw it, got rid of it. And I'm going to have to do a third video on that, because I saw the case for that, and it's absolutely compelling. They're right. Even outside of my gay observations, they're right. Mark was written first, then Luke. Matthew was written last, and it's put first and given the pride of place, I think, to set the agenda and get rid of the gay stuff completely, so that when you're done through Matthew, you get into Mark and Luke, you don't see it anymore. It completely disappears. So I'm going to have to walk through that case. And as I walk through this stuff on UFOs, as I walk through all the other videos, and you're going to want to think that I'm full of shit, understand this is a prime example of how excellent my scholarship is. Cheers to you. I don't make stuff up. You know, you play the hand that you're dealt, or in the case of football, you play it where it lies. Where that football lies, your next play, that's where you're going to start. Because all that I have is my credibility. I don't have any formal training. I'm just some guy on the internet. The only thing that I can say is I'm not lying to you. I never lie to you. I'm telling you what I think. Okay, so let's go on, because we're going to start with the Gospel of Luke. Here's the thing. UFOs has been around for thousands of years. They've been pulling stunts for thousands of years. They've been held off by God, but if you watch the news, you can see they're coming back. They're making it more and more obvious that they're real. Jesus said, when they start coming back, guess who else you need to start looking for? Jesus. When they start coming back and pulling their stunts, I'm going to be coming back. So we're going to start out with the Gospel of Luke, chapter 17. We're going to start with verse 22. This is one of the passages, and I'll go into this, that's very gay in the Gospel of Luke and gets altered in the Gospel of Matthew. Also, I'm going to have to do a lot of translating on the fly, because translators know this stuff is gay. And so they're purposely mistranslating these passages. They're doing it into English. I assume they're doing it everywhere else. Then he said to the disciples, "The days are coming where you will long to see one of the days of the Son of Man, and you will not see it. They will say, 'Look here, look there. Do not go, do not set off in pursuit.' For as the lightning flashes and lights up the sky from one side to the other, so will the Son of Man be in his day." Okay, lightning flashes up and lights up the sky from one side to the other. Who in Greek mythology is associated with lightning? Zeus. It's going to be important. But first he must endure much suffering and be rejected by this generation. Just as it was in the days of Noah, so too will it be in the days of the Son of Man. Because the UFOs were messing around in the days of Noah. We're going to talk about that. They were eating and drinking and marrying and being given in marriage. It's going to be important. Until the day Noah entered the ark and the flood came and destroyed all of them. Likewise, just as it was in the days of Lot, Sodom and Gomorrah. They were eating and drinking, buying and selling, planting and building. But it rained on the day that Lot left Sodom, and it rained fire and sulfur from heaven and destroyed all of them. It will be like that on the day that the Son of Man is revealed. So there's something in common between Sodom and Gomorrah and what was going on in the days before Noah. One thing only, not homosexuality. You look through the Bible, not one single time is Sodom and Gomorrah associated with homosexuality, and they talk about it plenty. On that day, anyone on the housetop who has belongings in the house must not come down to take them away. And likewise, anyone in the field must not turn back. Remember Lot's wife. When Jesus is coming back, forget it. It's all going away anyway. Those who try to make their life secure will lose it, but those who lose their life will keep it. Throw it all away, get rid of all your baggage. I tell you, on that night, apparently Jesus is coming back at night, there will be two men in one bed. They just say two in one bed nowadays. It's two men. There's the word man is not there, but it's implied two men. And once upon a time, that both Catholics and Protestants translated it as two men. They got rid of it because people got onto the fact that we're looking at homosexuals. On that night, there will be two men in one bed. One will be taken and the other left. There will be two women grinding in the same place. One will be taken and the other left. Now this one says, this is an example how they lie. There will be two women grinding meal together. No. That's not what it says. There will be two women grinding together. No, grinding in the same place. That's important. Not together. Because there are ways, like synoptic gospel I was talking about, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. There's compound words all over the New Testament with sin. The phrase that they're using is in the same, which means place. So you have two men in bed, two women grinding in the same place. They're grinding in bed, they're having sex. These are gay couples. One will be taken, and the other left. Then they asked him, "Where, Lord?" He said to them, "Where the corpse is." No. See, I have to translate on the fly here. Where the body is, there the eagles will gather. In Matthew, it's where the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. Now the Greek is the same word, but it could be vulture, it could be eagle. Here, it needs to be eagle. It's certainly not corpse, it's a body. In the older translations, before they got onto the fact that this stuff was very gay, they used to say eagles. Now they changing it because they don't like it. So you have lightning, which is Zeus. You have a missing body, and you have eagles. If you ever watch David Paulides on the internet, Missing 411 on YouTube, I should look him up. He has missing people who are missing. Many of them young men, handsome men. This is the abduction of Ganymede by Zeus. That is what they're talking about. He either sent his eagles or came as an eagle to abduct him. So you have a homosexual story, which is true. Zeus actually abducted Ganymede. In my reading in the last video, Plato accused the Cretans of making that up. I was like, no, it absolutely happens. these beings who are associated with UFOs have been kidnapping people for thousands of years. Where the body is, there the eagles will gather. So what's going on with these aliens? Well, let's have a look. Well, these UFOs. The government is admitting to them. Now, when you're talking about spiritual beings, or things that might fly through the air and abduct humans out of thin air, there are several different species you might want to track. One of them is aliens. I'm going to put this first because that's what everybody thinks. I don't think any of these are aliens. None of them are aliens. Their behavior tells me that they're covered in the Bible. Also, the consistent pattern with them is they are subversive. They're always, well, Jesus is this, but blah, blah, blah. It's like, no. That's not the way that works. I don't think any of these are aliens. Now, in the Bible, you often hear of the Shade, or the Shadim in plural, which is from the Akkadian, another Semitic language, Shedu. Now, you hear a lot about cattle mutilations, and you hear them all over the place. You hear them going on at Skywalker Ranch. In Persian, Iranian, and Assyrian art, you see these giant bull figures. They're bulls with the head of human and the wings of eagles. Those are the Shedu. It's interesting. Now, the Shedu defended territory, so they're associated with territory. It's interesting that they're doing all sorts of mammals, but they're also mostly doing cattle. Well, if they look like cattle, maybe they're sending you a signal as to what they are. They defend territory. Okay, and that's important as well, because one of the farmers is noticing, ranchers, that when he stopped putting his cattle on a certain field, they stopped disappearing. So Skywalker Ranch might be the territory belonging to Shadim, or Shades. Okay? Also interesting, the Shade, or the Shadim, is consistently translated as demons, because these are the gods of other nations. That's not appropriate, because gods, and we'll do some reading here from Plato, gods are assigned to territory. So it's the territorial aspect of these spiritual beings that the Bible is referring to. By the way, it's important that I bring in Plato, because I'm going to use Plato, because you can use Plato after the Republic. You can use Plato as a 4th century BC commentary on Moses, on Genesis. You can use him as a commenter on Genesis, as a disinterested Greek commentator. And for example, on Timaeus, his creation story, he was not satisfied with the creation story from Hesiod in the Republic. And this is one of the reasons why I know he heard Moses, because it's the creation story from Genesis 1 and 2. But he's bringing in his philosophy, and he's bringing in Greek science. And we'll talk about examples of that. He's bringing in Greek science, and it's a commentary. So we'll see that there's an association with land, a specific territory. Now, I've said everything is in the Bible. There's one thing that's not in the Bible that I'm 100% certain is true from personal experience. The UFOs are us. Now, there's something called the Exeter incident. It's UFOs seen over Exeter, Vermont, or something like that in 1965, just a few hours before I was born. I did 2 videos on this, Nobody's Getting Away with Anything, and Nobody's Getting Away with Anything Redux. And I went over that and I said, listen, I was that UFO. That was me coming in. And in Redux, when I follow up on that, I talk about the fact that, there are people there's one man, for example, who saw a UFO. And by the way, I'm actually kind of embarrassed to tell you this kind of stuff, but it's like, I'm never going to lie to you. I have to tell you the truth. He saw a UFO, and then he saw himself from the position of the UFO. And there's another story I told, I don't remember what it is. But there are also, there's a guy in northern Italy who posts on Facebook, a UFO is always over his apartment. I heard about I saw an interview with a guy, and he knows a guy who says, he'll just grab his camera because he knows a UFO is out there. And sure enough, there's a UFO out there, and he takes UFO pictures. It's like, well, if we're the UFOs in many cases, not all of them, but if we're the UFOs in many cases, then that would make sense, and my experience would make sense. Because the UFO in Exeter, I don't remember, it's not Massachusetts. No, it doesn't matter. The UFO is basically doing things that that predicts what's going to happen in my life. And it's like in extreme detail. And then it was last seen heading up the road that you would take to go to the hospital that I was born in. Alrighty. Now there's another thing that I saw on YouTube, which was very fast, these lights in the sky, and they were fighting. I mean, it was a flat out fight. There's just no doubt that they were fighting. And some were trying to fly away, and then the others. So we might be looking at angels and their rivals. Now the thing about angel is you think that it's a species of spiritual being. Angel is just a messenger. That's all it means. If God sends me to tell you something, then I'm an angel of God. All right? The angel of the Lord in Moses is actually the Lord. God sends himself as an angel. Now the last one, well, not quite the last one, the sons of God, or the sons of the gods. These are by far the most dangerous. Now, when the Israelites talk about the Shadim, the gods who rule the other nations, they're really talking about the sons of God, or the sons of the gods. These are the ones who are dangerous. These are the ones who are pulling the stunts back at the time of Sodom and Gomorrah, and back at the time of Noah. These are the ones who will be coming back, and these are the ones who are coming back. A lot of the UFO mythology that you're hearing, yeah. By the way, when they come back, they're going to make a revelation that's going to shock you to your core. And you're going to want to be tempted to abandon Christianity. Don't. Because it's probably true what they're going to tell you, and if it is true, they're going to be able to prove it. Don't. It's in the Bible. Now, the instinct of a lot of Christians is just to say that they're demons. That's going to be kind of tricky. I can tell you, just as they're not aliens, they're not demons. The sons of the gods, what are demons? Well, what we call demons are what we will see in the Bible is they are the offspring of human beings and the sons of God, or the sons of the gods. That is a red line with God. If there's a series called Lucifer, which is bad enough, but I think it's Gabriel who has a baby with a human woman. I'm going to tell you right now, that's what's happening in Sodom and Gomorrah. That's what happened before the flood. That is a red line with God. You do that, you're going to be exterminated. I got this whole bunch of passages here where I'll walk you through that. You're going to be exterminated. In Genesis 1, chapter 6, in Genesis chapter 6, we're going to talk about the Nephilim, the mighty ones or something, we're not quite sure. These are the mixed sons, the mixed breed of human and the sons of God. This is why the earth had to be destroyed, because it polluted the bloodline. Whenever this happens, everybody involved in that race, the entire race, has to be exterminated because you're polluting the bloodline. Their souls are demons. And I'm going to go over that, both not only with the Bible, but also with Plato. Also, you might hear of Bigfoot. Now, Bigfoot is real. You actually see Bigfoot. And a lot of people are tempted to think that the Bigfoot are Nephilim because they're also giants, because it's often translated as giants. By the way, in the Septuagint, when I said that they don't remember what a lot of stuff is in the Bible, the translation is Nephilim from the Hebrew into giants is one of the things that they're not getting right. Bigfoot, I would say that Bigfoot is a primordial man. And by the way, if you're hunting or camping and one of the males gets very nasty tempered and starts scaring the shit out of you, which is what they tend to do, they tend not to attack. Well, that we know of. If they attack and kill you, we probably never know about it. That's their home. Just get up and leave. They could have, don't worry about them killing you. If you're at the stage where you can get up and leave, they could have killed you already. So they're just not going to do it. So again, we're going to go through a lot of Bible passages to talk about this. Now we're going to talk about Skywalker Ranch. Now the name itself is scary. A Skywalker, or no, Skinwalker Ranch. No, there's also Skywalker Ranch from Luke Skywalker. But Skinwalker Ranch. Now, skinwalkers. Ooh, isn't that creepy? Skinwalkers are witches, I think from Navajo, I'm not sure, one of the Indian tribes here, who can shapeshift, and they get their power from human sacrifice. And from what I understand, you're not even allowed to choose to become one. You're going to become a skinwalker, you're going to die. One of the things that's seen there is a large wolf, like a very famous story if you watch about Skinwalker. You know about the family that was there, and this big old giant wolf just walks right up to them. And then there's a calf with its head poking out, and the wolf just walks on up to him and then suddenly grabs the calf, and they beat the wolf off. They shoot the wolf, it doesn't do any good, and the wolf just walks off. And the guy tracked the wolf, and the wolf prince just disappeared. There's also a werewolf. One of the crazy stories that I heard from David Paulides was werewolves in trench coats who were smoking outside of the gates when somebody showed up to the gates. They're invisible people talking overhead in a foreign language. Now that, plus the cattle mutilization, that makes me wonder if these are the Shadim. Not the sons of God as identified by the Hebrews, but rather the Shadim, the actual ones who guarded the thrones and the palaces of the kings of Assyria and the kings and the sovereigns and the shahs of Iran. They're smarter than us, and apparently they can read our minds. That much is very clear. However, as I talked about before, if you're the UFO, then it makes sense that it's going to read your mind. Now, as I go through this, I've talked about rosaries that the Catholics pray. Here, every day you need to pray a rosary. And it's certainly true for those of you who, it is the Queen of Prayers. And Mary really is the Queen of Heaven. I'm a Protestant. The Catholics are 100% right. Even Eastern Orthodox, the Greek Orthodox or whatever, they think the Catholics are crazy about Mary. No, it's true. Actually, I'm going to have to talk about it here because it has something to do with UFOs. Mary being the Queen of Heaven has something to do with the UFOs. After one of the owners had sold the property, this is really creepy. They go through this guy's house, and every door has a heavy lock on it. Every single door, inside and out. So this thing was getting into the house. Something was. And they had these bolts to the floor where these chains for these big ass dogs. So somebody was just scared. However, as you see here, they make it clear that they can kill you anytime they want. And that's the way it is with Bigfoot. If one of these is scaring the shit out of you, rest assured, if it wanted to kill you, it would have already killed you. Just get up and leave, especially with the males. They're very territorial. One of the things that they've seen is holes in the sky, and you think that it's just light, but it's like when you look at it, it's like, no, it's a hole in the sky, and there's another sky behind it. And one of them was a creepy little creature coming out of it. So they're coming from a dimension. Now, as for the werewolf or the wolf, the scary stuff, okay, there's something called apotropaic. Basically, you have gargoyles on Notre Dame Cathedral, places like that. The fact that they're terrifying, okay, the fact that they're so terrifying indicates that there might be something even worse running around. Apotropaic means using a terrifying thing to scare off a terrifying thing. So this may be the thing to saying, hey, I'm your local gargoyle. I'm here to protect you. I know I'm scary, but I'm not here to scare you. As proven by the fact that I could kill you anytime I want. I can kill you anytime I want. Some of that might be going on. So it seems to be a mixed bag. Maybe the whole thing is a fraud. I don't know. I accept the possibility that the whole thing's a fraud. Okay, so now let's get into our Bible reading because we got a lot of work to do. And Plato as well. Now, as I go through this, you might ask, where's Satan in all this? Actually, I don't know. Satan is the primordial rebel against God. What his relationship is with what I'm going to be talking about, I don't know. There are several rebellions against God. Are they his partners in crime? Did he talk them into this? Is he their king? I don't really know. Satan rules the world, though. But as far as what his relationship with them, I don't completely know. So let's start into Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 8. Now, if you've ever seen a Dr. Michael Heiser, Heiser, you know what I'm talking about. This is the divine council theology. Bottom line is the gods are real. Zeus is real. Apollo is real. They're all real. They're on the divine council. They were set up to rule over different segments of human beings. I think they were actually attached to territory, like the Shadim, why they were called Shadim. So anyway, this is what I'm going to be talking about here. Now, I'm going to be translating this weird from what you're going to see. Here's the thing. Adam, like from Genesis, is not his name. It's what he is. He's the Adam, Ha-Adam, the earthling, or the groundling. I call him the earthling. And his name became earthling. Sometimes Moses calls him the earthling, and sometimes he calls him earthling. And if he does that, he's the earthling here. And in Deuteronomy, he's earthling. If Moses makes the distinction, then you need to make the distinction. Also, you hear me talk of the sons of God or the sons of the gods, because they're both here. Moses makes the distinction, so you need to make the distinction in your translation, and that's what I do. It's B'nai Elohim is sons of God. Elohim is plural for God, but it also, as plural, stands for the name of God. Okay? And that's how you translate it, unless the grammar tells you to do something different. And here it does. It's B'nai Ha-Elohim. That means you need to revert that Elohim from a singular name to plural gods, from God capital G to gods lower g. So it's the sons of the gods. Now this daughters of the earthling, it's going to make the passage very interesting. And by the way, it really makes, and although none of the readings from Plato here are going to fit with that, it makes the reading of Plato very interesting. When the earthling began to multiply on the face of the ground, and daughters were born to them, the sons of the gods saw that they were fair, and they took wives for themselves in all that they chose, marrying, given into marriage, just like Jesus said. Then Yahweh said, my spirit will not abide in the earthling forever, for he is flesh, they are flesh. Their days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of the gods went into the daughters of the earthling, who bore children to them. These are the heroes that were of old, warriors of renown, Achilles, or the emperor of Japan, who's supposed to be the descendant of the sun goddess. Yahweh saw that the wickedness of the earthling was great in the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of their hearts was only evil continually. And Yahweh was sorry that he had made the earthling on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So Yahweh said, I will blot out from the earth the earthling that I've created, people together with animals and creeping things and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the sight of Yahweh. And so what's going on here is, you hear about those alien-human hybrids, right? Red line. No, this is the connection. This is the connection that Jesus is making with Sodom and Gomorrah, because these people tried to rape angels, and they knew they were angels. And, you know, this is about homosexuality, right? And these are homosexuals, right? Every man was involved in that. Was every man of Sodom a homosexual? Is that your story? Are you sticking to it? Also, we homosexuals tend to say that Sodom was destroyed because it violated rules of hospitality. Rules of hospitality are going to be important. They are enforced by gods in a very interesting way. And that when I talk about the book of Revelation, it's going to show up there. Well, the exact same thing happened in the book of Judges, among the people of the tribe of Benjamin. They had taken the concubine of a man and raped her and then killed her. And they had to be destroyed. But God held back and didn't completely destroy, but they had to be destroyed by the Israelites. So anyway, what I'm saying is, the connection is missing with a different flesh. And there's another passage that it's consistently mistranslated on purpose. Now, I told you that they never say Sodom and Gomorrah is about homosexuality. And you could say, yes, they are, Bill. They talk about it in the book of the Epistle of Jude in the New Testament. No, they're not. This is the source New Testament with extensive notes on Greek word meaning, very important, translated with notes by Dr. A. Nyland. Dr. Nyland is a woman. She's a lady scholar. Do you have a problem with that? Sexist pig. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, she's a female. She's a scholar. And all she does for a living is she just reads Greek from the time of Homer all the way up through Byzantium. And so she says, I need to translate. She came up with her own translation of the New Testament. And it's real funky, groovy, and I really like it. But she gets this passage right. I'm going to read, there's only one chapter in the Epistle of Jude. I'm going to read verses 6 and 7. And as for the messengers, angels, so an angel means in Greek, messenger, who did not uphold their own office, but deserted their own places. Now that's going to be important. I'm going to go over that word meaning there because it's important. Because remember the shadim, they are attached to place. And abandoned and deserted their own places, like a military person abandoning his post. He held them firmly in eternal ropes down in the gloom, awaiting for the judgment of the great day. Just like these, Sodom and Gomorrah, as well as the surrounding cities, which in a similar way committed porneia and went after different flesh or strange flesh, ironically hetero, serve as an example of those who undergo punishment in the eternal fire. Oh, there's so much in here that's so fascinating. Now I talk about American cannot be right that the Bible came from Plato. This is one of those things where they don't like the theology of the Bible, and so they're resisting it. These sons of they're talking about in verse 6, it's talking about chapter 6. The sons of the gods with the daughters of the earthling. That's what verse 6 is talking about. And they just can't call them gods, so they call them angels. As for the messengers who did not uphold their own office, but deserted their own places, epalepo, to desert or to abandon, especially of places one ought to defend or attack. So now we're back to that shadim, aren't we? We sure are. Just like the Sodom and Gomorrah, as well as the surrounding cities, which in a similar way committed porneia, leave it untranslated, and went after hetero sarkos, or something like that. Different flesh, ironically hetero. A lot of them are translated that as unnatural flesh, because homosexuality is unnatural. That's a dog whistle for homosexual. No, sweetheart. It's different flesh. Again, ironically hetero. The only other time that's used is in the Epistle to the Hebrews, talking about Jesus. Jesus is of the priest of Melchizedek, even though he is in heaven, even though he's not of the tribe of Levi. He is of a different tribe. He's of the tribe of Judah. That's the only other time they use. And I like that she leaves porneia untranslated, because it just means sexual depravity is normally how it's translated, but porneia has connotations of idolatry. Now, I talk about Deuteronomy 23, 17 through 18. Let there be no kadeshah, well, actually 17. Let there be no kadeshah among the daughters of Israel. Let there be no kadesh among the sons of Israel. It's a Hebrew root for holy. And what it is there, and the feminine for holy in English is holly. So let there be no hollies among the daughters of Israel. Let there be no holies among the sons of Israel. Chapter 18, off the top of my head, don't bring anything to the temple as an offer that comes from a prostitute or from a dog, a male prostitute. It's abhorrent to the Lord. In the Greek, they're using let there be no porne, something like that, of the daughters of Israel, or porneun among the sons of Israel. This kadeshah, kadesh, holy, holy, porneun, this is all idolatry. And by leaving it untranslated as porneia, because we don't have a term in English that implies idolatry, she's talking about idolatry. So we have Jesus yoking together Sodom and Gomorrah. We have Jude properly yoking together, and you're lying about the Bible when you do your translation, making it about homosexuality, linking Sodom and Gomorrah. There's also called the Testament of Naphtali, that was found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's a thing with Second Temple Judaism. So that's what the connection is right there. with Sodom and Gomorrah. These Nephilim are an abomination. They require the destruction of the race. Although for some reason the Greeks got away with not being destroyed. I don't know. Go figure. Deuteronomy 2, 10 through 12. What page are we on, sweetheart? 740? No, 220. Page 220 in this Bible. And we're going to find another example of people who had to be exterminated because they were mixing. Now, have you ever seen Dune? You know, you have these Bene Gesserit witches. They're trying to get a Kwisatz Haderach, a male who has the power to have all memories. Well, I always thought that one of the things that God is doing with the Hebrews, and this might be why they had to be exterminated, because they might have mixed with the Hebrews, is out of the Hebrews, the ancient Israelites, he's bringing forth a Kwisatz Haderach. And I thought, well, the Kwisatz Haderach is Jesus. It's like a breeding program, just like the Bene Gesserit. And then I realized, no, the Kwisatz Haderach is Mary. Mary. And I think I answered the question as to why the Greeks were not exterminated, even though they also mixed with the divine being, because they were not in the vicinity of the Israelites. So anyway, these are another, the Nephilim are well known throughout that region. And they're just called by different names. Deuteronomy 2, 10 through 12. Now the book of Deuteronomy, remember me talking about how by the time Plato came around, there's a lot of stuff that the Israelites didn't even know about their own Bible, so it had to be older than Plato. Deuteronomy means second law. It's just seen as a law code. We found out not even 100 years ago that it's a treaty between Yahweh and Israel. We found it's a Hittite treaty. This treaty was, we found other examples of this treaty type, and they're like, oh, it's a treaty. Nobody had any idea. They'd long forgotten. They didn't even know who the Hittites are. Okay, so now, do not harass Moab or engage them in battle. I've given Ar as a possession to the descendants of Lot, and now I go into my reading. The Amim, a large and numerous people as tall as the Anakim, had formerly inhabited it. Like the Anakim, they are usually reckoned as Rephaim, though the Moabites call them Emim. Moreover, the Horim had formerly inhabited Seir, but the descendants of Esau dispossessed them, destroying them and settling in their place, as Israel had done in the land Yahweh had given them as a possession. So these Nephilim are called by different names. Wherever they go, the people have to be exterminated. This is not a racist thing of Jews killing off non-Jews. Jews are part Amorite. These people are Amorites, are related to them, but they had mixed with divine beings. And now we're also going to verses 5 through 10. Oh no, that's the other one. 20 through 23. This is stuff that's in parentheses. It also is usually reckoned as a land of Rephaim. Rephaim formerly inhabited it. These are all different names for the Nephilim, though the Ammonites call them the Zamzuim, a strong and numerous people as tall as the Anakim, also Nephilim. But Yahweh destroyed them there from before the Ammonites, so that they could dispossess them and settle in their place. He did the same for the descendants of Esau, who lived in Seir, by destroying the Horim before them, so that they could dispossess them and settle in their place even to this day. As for the Avim, who had lived in settlements in the vicinity of Gaza, the Caphtorim, who came from Caphtor, these are Cretans, these are people from Crete, destroyed them and settled in their place. My position, too complicated to go into, these Caphtorim spoke Italic, which is the parent language of Latin. These are Indo-European. So these people are not even Semites. Most people don't even think, even if you don't agree they're Indo-Europeans, most people don't think they're Semites. So these are people who are not even Semites. So you can't say that being this cruel is a Semitic thing. And it's not racist either. Excuse me. Once again, like I did last video, I forgot my water. I do so much talking. Now we're going to go over how the gods were supposed to behave, because Plato does a good job of that. How things were supposed to work out with the gods, but they didn't work out this way. How did they work out? Well, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, Mitch McConnell, maybe even Donald Trump. I mean, it seems to me that if you're the kind of person, you're exactly the kind of person who the people they want to exterminate you. And it's just like Donald Trump draws us out, and then when we need him, he's nowhere to be seen. Like on January 6th. I'm wondering if that's his role. Let me be honest. This is what you got instead. And now I'm going to talk about the way things should have been with these Shadim. Because Plato, I think, describes it perfectly. And he thinks that it did turn out that way, but he's wrong. And so this is what we got. This is how they behave. And before the incarnation, before Jesus came, they had a come to Jesus moment. The divine council was called. Jesus presided over it, and he gave them some very bad news. Psalm 82, page 745. It's so easy when you're reading the Protestant Bible, because just open in the middle and there's Psalms, but no, not the Catholic Bible is very, very different. Psalm 82. God has taken his place in the divine council. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment. You see, Elohim, plural for gods. We translate it as gods because you can't be in the midst of God. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked, Nancy Pelosi? Give justice to the weak and the orphan. Maintain the right of the lowly and the destitute. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked, which is exactly what they're doing. They have neither knowledge nor understanding. They walk around in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. I say, and Jesus quotes this in John, you are gods, children of the Most High. It's very important. There's the Most High, the God of gods. Children of the Most High, all of you. Nevertheless, you shall die like mortals and fall like any prince. Rise up, O God, judge the earth, for all the nations belong to you. Okay, they are the Shadim who rule over the place where the nations are. But actually those places don't belong to the Shadim. They belong to God. Psalm 89, verses 5 through 10, 750. Now, when Jesus implies that he's God, and the priests and the Pharisees, I can't remember, are scandalized in the Gospel of John. What are you talking about all these different gods? He's like, well, doesn't David say ye are gods? Talking about the different gods? Yeah, the gods are real. Okay. 5 through 10, verse 89. Let the heavens praise your wonders, O Yahweh, your faithfulness in the assembly of the holy ones. For who in the skies can be compared to Yahweh? You see, in that previous chapter, Psalm, people are saying, oh, God is talking to human beings, and they're gods. Well, are the human beings in the sky? Who among the sons, I think it's B'nai Elohim. Who among the sons of God is like Yahweh? Instead of B'nai Elohim, it's B'nai Elohim. Who among the heavenly beings, translated here, who among the B'nai Elohim is like Yahweh? A God feared in the council of the holy ones, great and awesome above all around him. O Yahweh of hosts, who is mighty as you? O Yahweh. O Lord God of hosts, O Yahweh God of hosts, who is as mighty as you, O Yahweh? Your faithfulness surrounds you. You rule the raging of the sea. When the waves rise, you still them. Kind of like when Jesus stilled the waves on Lake Galilee. He was walking on water. You crushed Rahab like a carcass, a sea monster. This is very kind of pagan. You scattered your enemies with your mighty arm. So, things did not turn out well for the Shadim, for the B'nai Elohim. And now we're going to go to, when did we get put under the power? If you know Michael Hauser, you know the answer to this. When did you get put under the authority of the different gods? When did the Indians get under Indra? When did the Hittites get under Teshub? When did the Greeks get under Zeus? When did this happen? Deuteronomy 32, verse 8. This is one of the passages. What page are we on? Page 260. This is one of the passages that had to be recovered from the Dead Sea Scrolls because of this resistance to this idea that we have different gods. Now, remember me talking about sons of God versus sons of the gods, and the daughters of Adam versus the daughters of the Adam? Here we have sons of God and sons of Adam. Deuteronomy 32:8. Here's the Most High again. When the Most High apportioned the nations, when he divided the sons of Adam, he fixed the boundaries of the people according to the number of the sons of God. The boundaries of the people, boundaries, place, location, they're fashioned to place. So when the Old Testament says shadim, and they're not demon. Demon means evil. And again, demon is the souls of dead Nephilim anyway, so it's not even the right thing. He fixed the boundaries of the people according to the number of the sons of God. Yahweh's own portion was his people. Jacob, his allotted share. Okay? So again, there's that place and location. God's attached to people. And now we move to Luke. We're going to move into the New Testament. Here's the interesting thing about the Jews of the New Testament is they're speaking Greek. You think, but not really. There's a lot of things that say to them just like, we don't know what you're saying. Because yeah, they're speaking Greek, but really they're speaking Hebrew. And that sounds kind of strange, but it's just like they're just saying things. They're using just the Greek word for what the Hebrew word was. And so like when Jesus talked about when your eye is bright and when your eye is dark, that's a phrase that comes from Hebrew. I don't remember what it means. But we try to read like a biology lesson. That's Jesus didn't understand his biology. And what it just basically means is either you're stingy or you're not. Are you generous to people or not? And that's all it means. Even though it's Greek, it's really a Hebrew saying. There's something called Septuagint Greek, which basically is Bible Greek. Sometimes it's just Greek pretending like it's Hebrew. No, sometimes it's Hebrew just pretending like it's Greek. I mean, it's so close to it. So now remember, now here's the thing. You have these demons who are the Nephilim, calling out to Jesus. We know who you are. You're the Son of the Most High. Doesn't that make Jesus a Nephilim? One of the Nephilim? Doesn't that make him a hypocrite? Aren't they saying he's a hypocrite? The Gospel of Luke to the rescue. Page 78, because they start things again when they go to the New Testament. Where does these stories of the... they also start again when they do the Apocrypha. Page 78. Where do these stories about Jesus' childhood, the so-called infancy narrative, where does it come from? It comes from the beloved disciple. How do I know? Because it's all about Mary. Who took care of Mary after Jesus was crucified and resurrected? The beloved disciple. And it's all about things going on in the temple. The beloved disciple, I guarantee you, is a priest, because when Jesus is on trial in the Sanhedrin, they let him in. And he would know about Mary, and it's all about Mary. Now, one of the so-called contradictions everybody says it's a contradiction. Why would you say that? Between Matthew and Luke is that the infancy narrative is radically different and the genealogy is different. Well, that's a contradiction. Well, look, he had two parents, a mother and a father, and a worldly father, but then he had the true divine father. That's what the difference is. Matthew, coming after Luke, perfectly explains the differences in the infancy narrative because he knows this is about Mary, so now you got to talk about Joseph. It's not complicated. You're just so ready to attack Christians and just make us look bad, and sometimes things are just dumb. Luke 1, 26 through 35. One of the most beautiful stories. Oh, the beloved disciple, Jesus loved him so much because he was so brilliant. He's so light. In the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent by God to a town in Galilee called Nazareth, to a virgin engaged to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David. The virgin's name was Mary. And he came to her and said, "Greetings, favored one, the Lord is with you." But she was much perplexed by his words and pondered what sort of greeting this might be. She ponders in her heart a lot. She's kind of an introvert. Probably, I'll bet you she was a very sweet woman, if you got to know her. She's like just a sweetheart. The angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. And now you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you will name him Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. And the Lord God will give him the throne of his ancestor David. He will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there will be no end." Mary said to the angel, "How can this be, since I am a virgin?" The angel said to her, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. Therefore, the child to be born will be holy, and he will be called Son of God." Not because, as the Mormons teach, Jesus had sex with Mary, and God had sex with Mary, and then they had Jesus, because this is a recapitulation of creation. Mary is the Tion of Genesis 1, the depth. In the depth, in the womb of the depth. The depth is a creature, a living creature that responds to the will of God, obeys instantly and with joy the will of God, just as Mary obeys the will of God. Okay? And I'm going to skip up to verse 38. And Mary said, "Here am I, the servant of the Lord. Let it be with me according to your word." And the angel departed from her. It's just just obey God. And she's just and the Catholics are so right about her. By the way, she'd be known as the Gevarah in Hebrew, the Great One. That's what the mother of the king is called, the Gevarah. And when Solomon receives his mother Bathsheba, he bows to his mother, not because she's superior to him, because this is his mother and he loves her. He sets up a throne to his right hand and says, "What do you want?" And she asks him a favor. This is exactly what Mary does in heaven. There's an exorcist talking about how the demon was talking about Mary. It says he does everything she says. And that's what she says at the wedding of Cana, the first miracle in the Gospel of John. Jesus is turning the water into wine, and she tells the servants, do everything he says. He does whatever she says, and she tells you, "This is my son, do whatever he tells you to do." And do it with great joy. It's such a beautiful story, isn't it? But that is very important to clear that up. And as a priest, here's how I know I see the hand of the beloved disciple. I see him in John chapter 1, and I see him in the book of Revelation. He always talks about the Bible, but he's so high up there, he knows it so well, he's so soaked in scripture that you don't even know he's talking about the Bible, so you have to be really careful. You don't even know he's talking about the Nephilim here. So you have to think about him. Okay? Here's an interesting one. Mark, page 54. The Gospel of Mark, chapter 5, 1 through 10. Okay, now, you notice how Yahweh is at war with the Nephilim? And that they are mighty men and that they are warriors like Achilles, for example? Jesus being at war with the demons is just carried over from the Old Testament. Nothing's changed. The demons are the souls of dead Nephilim. They crave human flesh because they used to have it. And the sons of God and the sons of the gods, they're spiritual beings. They don't have flesh either. And they're jealous of us. And they're scared of us. And there's a reason for that. But this war between Yahweh and the Nephilim, or in this case, Jesus and the demons, takes on exactly that military cast here. They came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gerasenes. And when he had stepped out of the boat, immediately a man out of the tombs with an unclean spirit met him. He lived among the tombs, and no one could restrain him anymore, even with a chain. For he had often been restrained with shackles and chains. But the chains he wrenched apart, and the shackles he broke in pieces, and no one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always howling and bruising himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran up and bowed down before him and shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you, by God, do not torment me." For he had said to him, "Come out of this man, you unclean spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" And he replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." He begged him earnestly not to send him out of the country. Now there on the hillside, a great herd of swine was feeding, and the unclean spirits begged him, "Send us into the swine, let us enter them." So he gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out and entered the swine, and the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep bank into the sea and were drowned in the sea. Actually, I went on to verse 13. Such a wonderful story. By the way, interesting thing. The Homeric epics in the Gospel of Mark. Mark, another interesting thing that I talk about in my boot camp for saints. The Gospel and the Zodiac by Bill Darlison. Mark is tracking, well, let me get a little bit slower. There you go. And there you go. Mark is tracking the Zodiac, and he's also following Homer. This is from the Odyssey. See how it ends. Okay, now, anyway, and he compares this. This is the part where Odysseus is talking to the giant, the Cyclops. It's a very interesting book. Now, I talked about the last video how the author of Kings and the book of Samuel has obviously also read Homer. So there's that military confrontation between Yahweh and the Nephilim again. They are not the UFOs. And I'll talk about why they're called the Nephilim, just like because they consistently rule in the underworld. Gilgamesh and Achilles are rulers in the underworld, so that would make them demons. Now, one of the things that's going on between us and the sons of the gods is we're freaking them out because we're going to replace them. Remember we talk about Mary? Here's where it starts. We're constantly, the Catholic Church actually does a pretty bad job of defending Mary. Here I am, a homosexual, saying that you're wrong about homosexuality. But I hate to sound immodest, but I do a much better job of defending Mary than the Catholic Church does. Calling her the Tehom, the depth. I've never seen a Catholic do that, for example. And here's another one. With Dr. Michael Heiser, the sons of God, the sons of the gods were real. Now, we Protestants are always accusing Catholics of Mariolatry. We say that Mary is a goddess. And these passages are going to back up what I'm just going to tell you just now. That Mary is a goddess. And that you're worshiping the Queen of Heaven, that it's pagan. And they're like, no, we're not. It's like, actually, you kind of are. The Queen of Heaven was real. But she's been shoved aside and replaced by Mary. The Queen of Heaven was real. And Mary is now the new Queen of Heaven. Just exactly the way the pagans saw her. See, but you didn't know about the sons of God and about the divine council theology of Dr. Heiser. You need to do that because it helps with Mary. And by the way, if we're replacing the gods, you pray to gods to intervene to help you out. Now you're praying to the saints. That's what the Catholic Church is into. Just because you ask me to intercede for you doesn't mean you're telling me that I'm God. It just means, and it's the same thing. We will pray for each other. We're a family. God doesn't need any of this. But God wants us to be a family and to love one another, and family helps each other out. And just because your family has gone to heaven doesn't mean they're going to stop caring for you or stop wanting to. And so now, if it looks like these saints have replaced gods, it's because they have. It's because we have. It's Bible. And this is one of the reasons why these sons of the gods, who may be some of the beings involved at Skywalker Ranch, this is what's freaking them out. They're doing what they have to do, even though it's going to get them thrown into hell, even though they know that, because it's the only card they can play. They're trying to stretch things out as long as possible. And again, I don't know what their relationship is with Satan. So we'll go to 1 Corinthians 6, 1 through 4, page 234. 234, 1 Corinthians. Something that's just, you read this and you're like, Paul, what are you talking about? Where are you getting this from? This is something that we Christians made up. This is proof that Christianity is false. Listen, I'm going to talk about this in my next video. This is proof that Christianity is true. Christianity is weird. That weirdness, when you really look, proves that we're true. There's a lot of stuff where we sound nothing like Jews and Muslims. It's because they're wrong and we're right. We are carrying things forward from the ancient Israelites. They are not. So 1 Corinthians 6, 1 through 4. This is the way we should all be together. When any of you has a grievance against another, do you dare to take it to court before the unrighteous instead of taking it before the saints? Do you not know that the saints will judge the world? And if the world is to be judged by you, are you incompetent to try trivial cases? This is one of the things where the Mormons are right. Listen, you're going to be a god. Don't be such a slob. Do you not know that we are to judge angels, to say nothing of ordinary matters? And this is how kind of, if you're fag bashing and abusing the Bible, even though I'm doing it publicly, I do it with love. It's like, listen, you need to stop that. This is what I'm doing here. I have a grievance against you. And I go through a lot of trouble to back this stuff up. Not because I'm a homosexual and want to defend myself, because I want to get to the bottom of the truth. I play the ball where it lies. If God's against homosexuality, then I'll work from there. I'll do what I have to do. But he's not. Do you not know that we're going to judge angels? And remember, we would say angels instead of gods at this stage. So we're going to judge gods. They know we're going to judge them. When you find out the stuff that's going to rattle you and you're going to be tempted to abandon, that's precisely when you don't abandon. You're going to judge these beings, and they know it. I remember C.S. Lewis talking about how you go to church and there's this guy next to you who's all sweaty and doesn't look very good, and the church does not seem impressive. But when Satan sees the church, he sees a vast army laid out on the earth and an armada at sea with their flags flying. And so the sons of God, these UFOs, they see the same thing. They're terrified of us. They know what we're going to be. And that right there is one of the things that we're going to be. And here's an interesting one. I'm going to go to Zechariah 4, 1 and 2, and then skip over to 10, chapter 10, or verse 10b, the last of verse 10. And then I'm going to jump over to Revelation. And I'm going to read that because they're connected. A very interesting connection. And then I'm going to compare it to Job. Job chapter 1, verses 6 through 12. What am I going to show you? Is that we are going to become gods. But once upon a time, we weren't. And there were gods running around doing things that we're going to do. So let's go to Zechariah 4, page 1223 in the Old Testament. Maccabees, again, that's Septuagint, or not the Septuagint, whatever. Apocrypha. Zechariah, that's Habakkuk, 12:23. Keep going. Verse 4. Now notice how the action works out. The angel who talked to me came again and wakened me, as one is awakened from sleep. So it's like, oh, I'm startled by this. I'm asleep, and then, oh, this angel's waking me up. He said to me, what do you see? And I said, I see a lampstand, all of gold. This is a menorah. With a bowl on the top of it. There are 7 lamps on it, with 7 lips on each of the lamps that are on top of it. And by it there are 2 olive trees, etc. So he looks up, and this angel wakes him up. It's like, what? And he sees a menorah with lights. Chapter 10. The 7 lights are the 7 eyes of Yahweh, which reigns through the whole earth. So these are the eyes of God. So now we're going to go to the book of Revelation. Chapter 1, 10 through 20. 365, page 365, the number of the sun, right? Very interesting that should be so in this passage. (10 through 20). I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and I heard behind me a loud voice like a trumpet. So here I'm minding my own business. It's like, what? Saying, write in a book that you see and send it to the 7 churches, to Ephesus, to Smyrna, to Pergamum, to Thyatira, to Sardis, to Philadelphia, and to Laodicea. Then I turned to see whose voice it was that spoke to me. And on turning, I saw 7 golden lampstands. He sees a menorah. And in the midst of the lampstands, I saw one like the Son of Man. This is from Daniel chapter 7. Clothed with a long robe and with a golden sash across his chest. I think that's also from Zechariah, I'm not sure. His head and his hair were white as white wool, white as snow. His eyes were like a flame of fire. Now, in Daniel chapter 7, for those of you who says the Father and the Son are not one God, like the Mormons, Daniel chapter 7 has the Son of Man, and in this description, the hair white as snow is the Ancient of Days. That's the Father. Both descriptions are applied to Jesus here. And this is the hand of the, I don't know what the relationship is between John, who wrote the book of Revelation, and the beloved disciple, but this is the hand of the beloved disciple, the lampstand. He never says, and thus from the book of Zechariah, chapter 4, he just does it. And you're supposed to scramble to catch up. The reason why Revelation seems so strange to us is because John is smarter than us, and we're just not keeping up. His feet were like burnished bronze, refined as in a furnace, and his voice was like the sound of many waters. In his right hand he held 7 stars, and from his mouth came a sharp two-edged sword, and his face was like the sun shining with full force. It's kind of interesting, 365. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. But he placed his right hand on me, saying, "Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last, and the living one. I was dead, and see, I am alive forever and ever, and have the keys of death and of Hades. Now write what you have seen, and what is to take place after this. As for the mystery of the 7 stars that you saw in my right hand, and the 7 golden lampstands, the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches. We are now the eyes of God in the world. We are now God present in the world." If you're going to make your little smart-ass comments about this, you people who like to do that, who like to lie about us and slander us and libel us and steal from us and murder us, you better drop to your knees and repent. Because what did Jesus say? You do this to the least of these, you do it to me, whether good or bad. If you torture me, you torture Jesus. You steal from me, you steal from Jesus. You talk shit about me as a Christian, you talk shit about Jesus. Better watch your mouth. Because we are the eyes of the Lord. We are doing what God's used to do. Job 1, 6:26. This is very interesting. You'll see why. The book of Job, because God is so mean to him, it seems like. He suffers so much even though he's innocent. If you're not a Christian, this doesn't make a lot of sense. If this is a Christian, it makes complete sense. God does not ask you, Jesus does not ask you to do anything that he would not do himself. Ten, 6 through 12. Okay. One day the sons of God came to present themselves before Yahweh, and Satan, the accuser, came among them. Yahweh said to the accuser, "Where have you come from?" The accuser answered Yahweh, "From going to and fro on the earth and from walking up and down on it." Just like the eyes of God, just like the church today, we now do what the accuser did. And that's what Satan means, is the accuser, but he's the false accuser. Yahweh said to the accuser, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one like him on earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and turns away from evil." Then the accuser answered Yahweh, Does Job fear God for nothing? Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not put a fence around him and his house and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But stretch out your hand now and touch all that he has, and he will curse you to your face. Yahweh said to the accuser, cheers to you. Very well. All that he has is in your power. Only do not stretch out your hand against him. So the accuser went out from the presence of Yahweh. So we've replaced Satan. That's what we will become. And in the final verse, the final two sections do the same thing. Revelation. And by the way, going to and from the earth, seeing if you're doing evil. You know how the gods would show up in disguise to see if you're hospitable? This is another thing that the gods do. You see that a lot in the Greeks. You're kind to somebody, it turns out to be Zeus. Abraham is kind to people, it turns out to be angels. We're now doing that. You this old guy, slob like me, you like to beat up, like to mock Christians. I'm God on earth when I function as a Christian. we understand that this stuff needs, that's a part of the book on like up here for the gospel and the zodiac, the part on the when you pray a rosary, it's like when you're doing a centrifuge for uranium and you're purifying uranium, you do this over a long period of time, and you just get closer to being godly, and you just sort of get stuff out of the way. Get out of your own way so you can become godly. That stuff is a work of a lifetime. It'll never happen. But you can become very, very saintly if you put the work in. There's no argument really between Catholics and Protestants over faith versus work. If you really love something, you'll put in the work. It's just the way it is. If you love me, you'll make time for me. You'll do nice things, and I will do the same for you. I'll make time for you. And I was at the grocery store, and my boyfriend Tom, I don't have a boyfriend. Pray that I get one. He likes this. I'll grab this. It's hard for us to find. Revelation 2, 26 through 28. Revelation 2, 26 through 28. Page 367. I have this book here, 365, 367. I was listening to Dr. Michael Heiser talk about Revelation and how it uses the Old Testament. It's like hours and hours and hours of stuff. This stuff that I got with the candlestick, lampstand, and everything I got from him. And one of the people that he's following, I ordered this beast. When I first got it, I thought it was a mistake. I thought they sent me another Bible instead. This is the New International Greek Testament Commentary, NIGTC, on the Book of Revelation by G.K. Beale. And this, when I talk about the lampstands from Zechariah, Heiser talked about it and Beale talks about it, so I had to look it up in here. I want to learn. I've started kind of learning Greek and Hebrew. I can look at interlinear Bibles and stuff to look at the Greek and Hebrew off the fly when I need to. I'll read monographs, single topic papers from scholars if I'm having some trouble figuring out a verse. I want to learn Greek and Hebrew for sure, just so I can read the book of Revelation now. I am completely inspired because John makes you work for your dinner, makes you sing for your supper. He makes you work. Oh. Okay. Anyway. This I got from Heiser, but not from that book. Chapter 2, 26 through 28. To everyone who conquers and continues to do my works to the end, I will give authority over the nations and over their shadim, to rule them with an iron rod, as when clay pots are shattered. And even as I also receive authority from the Father, to the one who conquers, I will also give the morning star. Let anyone who has an ear listen to what the Spirit is saying to the church. I will give authority over the nations to rule them with an iron rod, as when clay pots are shattered. Again, this is a direct quote, though. He's not being so oblique. This is Psalm 2, 7 through 9. 675, right? Yes. 675. A lot of people that we Christians are just so dumb is like, no, we're not. We're the reason why we look dumb is because we're smarter than you, because we're better than you. That's why everybody hates us. They hate us because they ain't us. And so just turn into Jesus. And sometimes you forget to do that when you're a believer. Remember Peter falling in the Sea of Galilee and because he stopped looking at Jesus. Focus on Jesus. Plato actually talks about that, how we're like marionettes on a string going between good and evil. Okay, but there's a golden thread from heaven that keeps us going right. I'm not going to quote that here. Just keep your eye on Jesus. Psalm 2, 7 through 9. 675. A little bit further to go. Again, if you're all the Apocrypha stuff, with one exception, I think it's the Book of Wisdom. I can't stand them. They don't belong in the Bible. Now, this is one of the prophetic psalms about Jesus. Okay? 7 through 9. Here we go. I will tell the decree of Yahweh. He said to me, You are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage, and the ends of the earth your possession. You shall break them with a rod of iron, and dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. So Jesus says, what God has given to me, I give to you. You will be God's. The Mormons are absolutely right about that. So don't be a slob and act like it. I look kind of like a slob because I'm a binge eater, but I still work out and everything. Do what you can. I mean, yeah, I have a binge eating problem and I just don't want to stop. I've tried everything that I can, but being a binge eater doesn't stop me from going to the gym. It doesn't stop me from getting out in the sun. It doesn't stop me from having a life. And now an extra part to give you a good idea of these Nephilim. We're going to do one last thing. We're going to look, like I did in the previous video, we're going to look at Plato's commentary on the Bible. Now this is Plato's Complete Works, edited by John Cooper and associate editor D.S. Hutchinson. If you're going to read Plato, just get this in English, just get it. You can get the older translations that have no copyright. You can get reprints of them like here. They're great introductions and everything, so just get this. So our next reading is going to be from Plato and somebody else. Okay, I'm going to do a lot of reading for Plato, and maybe some videos I'll read from one of the Vedas of the Hindus and treat it as scripture. And you're going to think that that's absolutely crazy. I don't think so. I don't put them above the Bible, but the bottom line is, even though you worship these different gods, they were put over you, they were put in authority over you by God. Now, Plato, I believe, is consciously disagreeing with the Bible, with Moses. I don't think this is true, that gods are good, and here's why, but Plato, you're wrong. But nevertheless, he does a very good job describing how things should have worked out if the gods behaved as they ought to have behaved. And what would have happened is we would have still joined the divine council. We still would have been saved. Okay? It still would have happened, and we would have been on the council with them. Instead, we're going to have to judge over them and throw many of them into hell. And so that's what's happening here. And I'm going to read from Homer with reverence, and as well. I'm going to read from Homer. I'm going to read from the Iliad. And I'm going to read from Plato with reverence. I believe that when it's like I told you with Plato, you're the marionette, and not good and evil, but for him it's virtue and vice. You're pulled by pleasure here, but you're pushed by pain over here, but there's the golden thread. God has always sent that golden thread. And whether or not the gods behaved as they should have behaved, nevertheless, if you love truth, then you love Jesus. And a lot of people, you say, have rejected Jesus. I was just like, well, if you're told that Jesus hates fags, and you're a fag, a homosexual, have some dignity. Some people use that like queer. No. Have some dignity. You're going to be a god. Act like one. If you're told that, and you say, well, then no. You haven't rejected Jesus. If you love truth and strive after truth and cut people slack and try to get in their shoes, that doesn't mean show no justice, though, like George Floyd. Somebody should have shot him a long time ago. But have justice. I believe you'll be saved. One of the books that I might be working on is Why Plato is in Heaven. So we're going to do this. And it's like amazing. Plato is an amazing commentary. Some of his books, Timaeus, The Creation Account, Critias, we're going to read a little bit from Critias, is about Atlantis. The Laws are amazing commentary on the Bible. Truly divine stuff. Truly coming from God. So we're going to read Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 through 28. Here's something really weird. For the longest time, I thought he was talking about the Trinity here. This was the Trinity showing up. But no, it's God talking to the divine council. He's talking to gods. Then God said, let us make humankind in our image. Let us make Adam in our image, earthling in our image, according to our likeness. And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So God created Adam in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them, both male and female image of God. God blessed them, and God said, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. Earthling. Okay. Now, and yet it switches to God doing this. It's just like, because although the gods do it, as Plato's read this, and he says, yeah, the gods do it, but here's why it's actually God who did all that. So, where are we moving to? Now, as I explained in the other video, this is divided up into different sections. There was an earlier translation or compilation of Plato, and this section here is like section 41B through D, I think. It says B through B. I meant B through D. Basically, on that earlier compilation, it was on page 41, section B, is where this started. So it's like the closest you're going to get to chapter and verse for Plato. So what I just read was Genesis 1:26, actually through 28. This is going to take me to page 1244, Timaeus 41B through D. Okay. So, and God said, let us make man in our image. And I won't read it here, but what is the image? It's circularity. It's right over here. In Plato has mandalas, which if I talked about with C.G. Jung, and mandalas are round and there's circulation. This is the circulation of the divine. And how we're made in God's image, and I'm not going to read it here, but is our head is spherical, it's round. This is where the higher soul, it's like we have roots down roots down to heaven, down to earth, and up to heaven. And we have a little isthmus down here to the lion spirit, and then down here is the spirit of digestion. So we have an eternal spirit, spherical. This is the image of God right here for man and woman. And then we have the earthly spirit. The earthly spirit goes down to the earth, and when I read Homer, it's going to talk about that, because this is true also for Homer. But the eternal spirit flies off. This is also in Homer. So let us make man in our image. O God, works divine, whose maker and father I am. Whatever has come to be by my hands cannot be undone but by my consent. Now only one who is evil would consent to the undoing of what has been well fitted together and is in fine condition. Turns out they fall from fine condition. This is the reason why you, as creatures that have come to be, are neither completely immortal nor exempt from being undone. Though you are gods, you will die like men. Still, you will not, although I don't know if Plato read the Psalms, although he might have. Still, you will not be undone, nor will death be your portion, since you have received the guarantee of my will, a greater, more sovereign bond than those with which you were bound when you came to be. Learn now, therefore, what I declare to you. There remain still three kinds of mortal beings that have not been begotten, and as long as they have not come to be, the universe will be incomplete, for it will still lack within it the kinds of living things it must have if it is to be sufficiently complete. But if these creatures came to be and came to share in life by my hand, they would rival the gods. It is you, then, who must turn yourself to the task of fashioning these living things as your nature allows. This will assure their mortality, and this whole universe will really be completed whole. Imitate the power I used in causing you to be, and to the extent that it is fitting for them to possess something that shares our name of immortal, something described as divine and ruling within those of them who always consent to follow after justice and after you. You see, God, you might not live in a society where you can explicitly turn to Jesus, but there is always a door open for you. I shall begin by sowing that seed and then hand it over to you. The immortal soul comes from God. The rest of the task is yours. Weave what is mortal to what is immortal. Fashion and beget living things. Give them food, cause them to grow, and when they perish, receive them back again. Okay? Timaeus 42, section E. the whole paragraph. Having sent out all these ordinances to them, to the gods, which he did to exempt himself from responsibility for any evil that they might afterwards do, the god preceded the demiurge. You see, when you hear about Plato and like the Gnostics, the demiurge is like a lesser god who created the cosmos, and they're saying they came from Plato. It's like, no, the creator of the cosmos is God. He's not a lesser god. The god proceeded to sow some of these immortal seeds into the earth, some into the moon, and other into various instruments of time. It's kind of interesting. After sowing, he handed over to the young gods the task of weaving mortal bodies. He had them make whatever else remained that the human souls still needed to have, plus whatever goes with those things, so probably the animal souls. He gave them the task of ruling over these mortal things and of giving them the finest, the best possible guidance that they could give, without being responsible for any evils these creatures might bring upon themselves. Zeus talks about that in the Iliad. It's like they're always blaming us for all their problems. Always blaming us for all their problems. We're doing what we can. Now remember the Nephilim? How I talked about how their souls are the demons until I read Homer doing my work on Atlantis. I had no idea that Homer outright says that. Homer is commenting here, I'm confident, on Genesis chapter 6, 1 through 6. As for the other spiritual beings, daimones, demons, daimones, a daimon is not necessarily a demon, but all demons are daimones. It is beyond our task to know and speak of how they came to be. We should accept on faith the assertions of those figures of the past who claim to be the offspring of gods. They must surely have been well informed about their own ancestors, so we cannot avoid believing the children of gods, the sons of the gods. Even though their accounts lack plausible or compelling proofs, rather we should follow custom and believe them on the ground that what they claim to be reporting are matters of their own concern. Accordingly, let us accept their account of how these gods came to be and state what it is. And then they state the different gods, and then the quote I have, "O gods, whose work divine and maker and father I am." So that's talking about him. All right. And there's another part in here that's actually kind of sexist, so I think I kind of left it out. All right. So once the souls were of necessity implanted into bodies, and these bodies had things, this is from section 42, the middle of the paragraph, page 1245 in this book. And these bodies had things coming to them and leaving them. The first innate capacity they would of necessity come to have would be sense perception, which arises out of forceful disturbances. This they all would have. The second would be love, mingled with pleasure and pain. Pleasure and pain are marionette. One side of the line between virtue and vice after the other. And they would have to fear, they would have fear and spiritedness as well, the lion spirit. Plus whatever goes with having these emotions, as well as all their natural opposites. And if they could master these emotions, their lives would be just, whereas if they were mastered by them, they would be unjust. And you have that golden thread thrown to you. And if a person lived a good life throughout the due course of his time, he would in the end return to his dwelling place in his companion star, because for every star there's a human, and the stars are also gods. So this thing of human becoming gods is also in there. Character. But if he failed this, he would be born a second time, now as a woman. And even if he still could not refrain from wickedness, he would change once again, this time into some wild animal that resembled the wicked character he had acquired. He'd have no rest. Okay? Keep doing it until he returns to his original condition of excellence. Watch out, God's going to turn you into a woman. Keep that up. Tell that to your boys. They're going to love that. Anyway, I thought I'd read it. But the gods are supposed to guide us. And now here from Critias, which is where Atlantis is, The religion of the Atlanteans is the religion of the Israelites, by the way. He might have read Psalms, but I know he read Ezekiel and he read Deuteronomy. So Critias 109 B through D, page 1295. But this is about the way the gods were supposed to behave. Okay? In how they were supposed to lead us to virtue and lead us back to our companion star. That's what the Iliad is all about. They say it's about the wrath of Achilles, and I talked about this in the other video, but it's about the redemption of Achilles. Achilles is a closeted homosexual. He doesn't even know he's gay. He is all naos, without mind. Okay? King Nestor is naos as naos. Odysseus is naos, moving through the world, mind moving through the world. The myth of return in early Greek epic. Where does that word naos come from? It doesn't sound very Greek. It comes from Nehemiah, to return. Return from the land of the dead. Let's not complicate this anymore. I won't go that any further. He has to bring him into true mind. This is the will of Zeus. And Plato had problems with poets. He had some problems, but he doesn't understand how poetry meant to act. Just like he had a problem with us homosexuals, he missed poets. The first 5 lines in the Greek. Rage. Goddess, sing of the rage of Peleus' son Achilles. Murderous, doomed, that cost the Achaeans countless losses, hurling down to the house of death many sturdy souls. Great fighters saw heroon, heroes' souls, but made their bodies carrion, feasts for the dogs and birds. And the will of Zeus was moving toward its end. The will of Zeus, his mother, Achilles' mother, Thetis, puts her hand on his thigh and up to his chin to beg him, please save my son because he's been humiliated. The will of Zeus is that Achilles be redeemed, that he becomes naos. This is Zeus behaving as Zeus is supposed to behave. But then in the Odyssey, him and Poseidon, I believe, team up on the Phoenicians or whatever and destroy them. It's what it is. But it's kind of funny, I think in the Iliad, saying these humans always blame us for all their problems. Yeah. So now we're going to talk about the Shadim. Remember, the attachment to place is very important. Plato talks about this. This is Critias 109 B through D, page 1295. At one time, the gods received their due portions over the entire earth, region by region, and without strife. Indra gets his, Poseidon gets his, Poseidon gets Atlantis, Yahweh gets Israel. This is Deuteronomy. To claim that gods did not recognize what was proper to each would not be fitting, nor would it be right to say that, although they recognize what belonged to others belonged by just title to others, some would attempt to take possession of this for themselves in open strife. But as they received what was naturally theirs in the allotment of justice, they began to settle their lands. As the Shadim, you see, the Israelites are not calling them demons. They're doing what they're supposed to do, or they were. Once they settled them, they began to raise us as their own chattel and livestock, as do shepherds their sheep. You see, when you hear about these, what is it called? That we're raised to be a race of slaves. That's where that's come. No, we weren't. Okay, what's that? Nemesis, what's that planet? Oh, anyway, I'm not going to go into that. But they did not compel us by exerting bodily force on our bodies, as do shepherds who drive their flock to pasture by blows, but rather by what makes a creature turn course most easily. As they pursued their own plans, they directed us from the stern, as if they were applying to the soul the rudder of persuasion. And in this manner, they directed everything mortal. As do helmsmen their ships. Okay? I am the good shepherd. It's like, listen, where I'm sending you, you need to go. And I'm not going to send you anywhere you don't need to go. But that's not the way it worked out. Now, as the gods received their various regions by lot by lot, they began to improve their possessions. But in the case of Hephaestus and Athena, since they possessed a common nature, both because she was a sister of the same father, and because they had entered the same pursuits in their love of wisdom and the arts, they both received this land as their portion in a single lot. Athens is what he's talking about, because it was congenial to their character. It was naturally suited to them for its excellence and intelligence. And they fashioned in it good men, sprung from the land itself, and gave them conception of how to govern their society. The names of these first inhabitants have been preserved, but their deeds have perished on the account of the catastrophes that befell those who succeeded them in the long passages of time intervening. They got hit by a great flood. Now, he believed there are several different catastrophes, some for flood, some for fire. And that's it. We're done. We're done with our Homer. Oh, this Homer. Oh. On the Greek, I can read it. Can't always understand it, though. Usually I can't understand it. When I read those first 5 lines, I would read it to you, but I'd be so terrible at it. Those first 5 lines. Oh, hang on. Let me look at this. Maybe it won't be too bad. You know, like when the soul's going down to the house of Hades. Polas iptimus psukas aidi proiapsen, heroon, autus de eloria tuke kunesen, oionoisi tepasi, dios de deleos boule. The will of Zeus moves on. Boy, I talked a lot about aliens. You can't believe that the Bible talks so much about them. No, I'm sorry, UFOs. But it actually does. Don't be freaked out if it turns out that they can prove that they created us, because it looks like that's exactly what the Bible's saying. Plato's arguing with us, but Plato is wrong. But that doesn't mean he's not divine, because even though he was wrong factually about him, he still got right the way things were supposed to work out. We should have joined the divine council, standing beside them. Instead, we're going to have to, they've been thrown out. The Queen of Heaven's not the Queen of Heaven anymore. She's been replaced by Mary. A lot of these saints have come in and replaced them. And this is the way it's going to be. So don't fall for their stunts. And of course, there's a lot of stuff going on. I don't seek to fly out of your body as a UFO, by the way. Don't even try that. I forget what it's called, where you move around out of your body. Don't do that. Don't mess with this stuff. If God does it to you, then God does that to you. Because this stuff is wild. There are several different species of beings out there. But just love God, stand with God, trust God, and do what he says. God bless.